All right, on this tutorial, we're going to be looking at this abstract calendar idea where you're going to be looking in Illustrator to create your illustration. Then we're going to be going into InDesign to work on the actual calendar and place it all in there. So let's look at these two parts. What I first want to start with in Illustrator, File, Document Setup, it's going to be a, artboards. It's going to be a 23 by 15. You don't need bleeds for this. 23 inches by 15 inches. You can make as many artboards as you want, but really I believe you're just going to need 3. What you're going to start with is some type of icon, some type of animal icon as a silhouette, because then what we're going to do, we're going to end up splitting it up into many different ways and really interesting. And we're going to play around with color and see how color interacts with each other using the primary, secondary, tertiary colors. So what I've done here, I've created my silhouette. It could be, what I suggest is you could get somewhat more detailed with it and have some fun with the silhouette. However, the more detailed you get with it, the harder it might be to tell what it is. But playing around with it, we can definitely do that. There's definitely ways to play with this. So what I've done is I've made a simple silhouette. It's already all united with my Pathfinder here. So I've united the whole thing. So it was a bunch of separate parts, but I just brought it together. That's going to help out a bit. What I've also done as well is I've made a random background color that does not exist in my primary colors. And I would do the same for my secondary and tertiary. And I'm just placing it in there nice. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what color you choose. I'm just trying to make sure it fits exact. And then what I'm also going to do, I'm going to grab my color wheel just for if I want to refer back at any point to these colors. And I'm also definitely going to grab my tints, tones, and shades. Now, my tints, tones, remember, we left the one blended, so that's fine. But the ones that are all separated, I expanded. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to use those. So my first one, I'm going to grab just my primary colors, my red, yellow, and blue. And I'm just going to copy those. And I'm going to bring them into my document here. And there they are. Now, I'm going to give you some tips as well as we go. So I'm going to put these here, but as I'm going to eyedrop these as I go. Now, I can place these into my swatch panel for quick access too. That's entirely up to you. So I'll leave that with you. So what I'm going to do here, it's a couple things. Number one, yes, my grays, whites, and blacks, I'm not actually going to use, so I'm going to separate those. And also, I'm not going to use my main primaries. My main primaries are only going to be used for inside the silhouette. But what I want is all of the tints, tones, and shades to be used on the outside area in the background. Now, because this kind of secondary area in between my pure and my, next getting to the darks, these ones are also very saturated and high chroma, so I don't really want to use those either. So I suggest actually we separate those as well. You might even want to separate the third, this other row here, but I am at least going to separate these ones, because what's going to start to happen if you add too many of these saturated colors or these colors here in the background, they start to actually take over too. You could almost, it's very difficult to separate the inside of the silhouette and the outside. So it's best to use very tinted, very shaded, very toned colors to really help differentiate between the foreground and the background. So I suggest even removing some of these. Like I said, you might even want to remove those, but yeah, those are maybe overpowering too. It's entirely up to you. To set up the design, what I will first want to do is I'm going to grab my pencil tool. Now the pencil tool is under the shaper tool. So if I long click or right click and find the pencil tool. Now there's a few different ways to do this, but I just like doing it this way because it's very random. But even with the randomness, there is some control over it. So what I did with mine here, I made a bunch of random lines that kind of intersected and all over the place. Then I did another set, and I wanted to find, like, it's okay to have larger areas. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I could fine tune and find some very smaller areas, it kind of creates some interest there too. And we want it to be interesting. The one thing I do not recommend is just doing kind of like a very perfect grid line of perfectly perpendicular and parallel lines of horizontal and vertical. Like, I don't recommend that. It's very boring. Yes, you could tell what it is, but it's not interesting at all. The idea here is to play around with the colors in really interesting ways with the tints, tones, and shades, and of course the pierced hues. So I'm only asking you to do this once, and you could use the same design all 3 times. That's what I want you to do. So what I'm going to do is I can potentially just start clicking and dragging and going through and making it very simple like this. But then I can start playing around with other lines. So there's one line, and I could just leave it there. Next, what I could do, I could start messing around with other lines, seeing how they work, maybe I'm going to start getting, I'm noticing there's, open big areas here. So I'm going to intersect there. Maybe I'll come and intersect here because I notice that there's something happening there. I really want to break up some of the bigger areas with some diagonals, with some horizontal and vertical. And what I have here now is pretty good. And now I'm going to have some kind of fun issues in here, but that's okay. We're just playing around. And I'm also going to, now I still see some bigger areas. And just want to break those up a little bit more. And really create some interest. Now you can get very specific on your pattern. Okay, I see what's happening here every time I do this. So I'm actually going to shut this off. That's what I need to do. And click back on with my, because what it's doing, it's picking up that pencil again. So I do have both here. So I'm seeing where that works out. And I'm going to do this one more time. And just finding some bigger areas that I'm just cutting down to make more interest. Okay, so we select all of those. Ooh, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now what I could do, what I strongly suggest you do first, when you have all your lines in there, is to duplicate this. So you kind of just save this as its own. So I'm going to take my artboard and make sure that this option is on. So what it's going to do, it's going to also move and copy the artwork with the artboard. Now that's under my control panel on. And this will make sure that I'm duplicating it. But I'm also duplicating the artwork too, not just the artboard. So now with everything selected, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a divide. And the divide in your Pathfinder window and Pathfinder is going to allow me to divide every little thing into individual shapes. Now it's divided. Now, anytime you use the Pathfinder, once you've clicked on it, it's going to be grouped. So I'm just going to ungroup it, which is Object Ungroup. And now when I click on the individual areas here, they're all individual shapes. So now I could start selecting and playing around with each and filling in each one of these. Now, what I also want to do is I do want to get rid of all the outside stuff because it's very distracting. It's not necessarily anything outside of the artboard. So what I do, I'm going to grab my white arrow tool. I'm just going to click and drag and make a marquee and get as close as I can without choosing any of the shapes on the inside. And I'm just delete. Same with the bottom. Same with the other side. And same with the top. And this is also going to help when you're importing this into InDesign. So you don't have any extras on the outside. So I don't want to delete those. Let me do that again. I see how far I have to go. No, that drops down a little too much. So let me just try that. Yeah, I'm looking pretty good there. I'm looking very flush there. Looking good there and looking good there. Great. So now what I want to do is I'm going to first start with the inside. Now the inside, we need to pull and put our pure hues on the inside. So the purest hues. So here, obviously yellow, red, blue. Here, obviously green, orange, and violet. And here I did something a little bit different. I'm going to explain in just a little while. But the purest hues. So if I just start playing around, this is what I'm going to get. So I'm going to bring these over a little closer. And I'm only looking at the purest hue. So let me start at the head here. And I'm going to eyedrop. I'm going to choose the red. Okay, there's my red. Great. Now, how I could play with this is, I've used this a lot. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut V for the selection tool and the keyboard shortcut I for the eyedropper. So I'm going to go V and I'm going to choose another color. Eyedrop it, and then we go back and forth. V, I'm going to grab that blue. I to eyedrop it. Now, what I want to see is I don't want to see another red here. I want you to be able to never let them touch. Now they are allowed to kitty corner. So this yellow can now be a yellow or a blue. This one could be a yellow or a blue. So now if that's yellow, if I choose this one, well, it could be a red or a blue. But because red's already there, I'm going to separate them even more. I'm going to go blue. And I'm going to go down here, V, click. And now this one could be a red or that has to be red. So it can't be yellow because it's touching, can't be blue because it's touching. So it has to be red. So in these situations, that's okay. We're just playing around. and just going back and forth. So now once again, this can be yellow or red. I'm going to go with red because it's further, but I want you to play with the interaction. I want you to see which one you feel should go there and why, and maybe there's better choices. Maybe your design is going to be far more intricate. I could maybe have broken this up even more. And I can still break it up even more after the fact. I would just click more lines. Like I see these are really big. Maybe I should have made more lines in there. I could break it up again if I wanted to with another pencil drawing. Let me do it actually just to show you. Once you're too far in, you shouldn't break it up. But what I'll do is I'll see that this is, you know, whatever the case is. I could always go back in. There we go. I select it all again. I divide. I ungroup. And I'll get rid of these ones again. Just showing you the options we have here. But I don't recommend doing this. What I recommend is kind of looking at your pattern first and saying, oh yeah, you know, bigger areas, maybe I could break this up, maybe I could break this up, but you know, I do want to get pretty intricate with it. And now, of course, these are broken up again. Like I said, which I don't really recommend you do, but you're able to do that. So what do I have here? I have this. Okay, so now that one, I'm gonna eyedrop. Let's see, blue. And why are we doing that? Pressing the wrong button. V, eyedrop red, and so on and so on. So this is the new one there that should not be touching, so I'll make that yellow. And I'll continue on like this. Now, if I want to, I can add certain ones into my swatch panel. So if I just click on this red, click on the plus sign, I'll say, okay, it's 100%. We can see magenta and yellow, and there's my red. I'm going to bring it down here just for now. My yellow, I'm going to add, okay, and I see it's up there anyways. It is a global color. That's a good thing because we could always change it after, which might come in handy. Click on the plus sign, and now I say okay, and there's my blue, and I'll drag it down here. So now what I could do with those three colors is select them all and click on the folder to group them, and I'll just call these my primaries. And now they're in their own folder, which you could do, and we could play around with it this way as well. I go a little bit quicker. Instead of using the eyedropper, I could just click and into my swatch panel. So I'm just going to move along a little faster here, and I'm going to finish up with the inside here. All right, so there is my finished inside. It looks pretty interesting. Like, I wouldn't have mind breaking this up, but this is fine too. There's nothing wrong with this. All my pure colors are taken care of. So now is where the interesting part starts here, where I'm gonna start playing around with the background. And now the background, as I mentioned, it's made up of all the colors, but all the tints, tones, and shades. But obviously, as the darker we get, or if we get a little lighter, some colors do seem to come closer. Some colors seem to recede. But we don't want it really to interfere with our main objective here, the silhouette, to be strong, where the saturated colors come forward more. So what we want to try to do is utilize all these colors in here, and we're going to, once again, we're still going to mix. We're still going to mix red, yellow, blue, make sure that they do not touch each other. But I also want to make sure, and this is kind of the idea behind it, where we're observing, we're understanding how these colors interact. So if I place here, well, it can't, once again, it can't be yellow. So let me choose, I'm going to do the eyedropper, the V and the I. V for selection, I for eyedropper. So I'm going to choose a desaturated. The more desaturated it is around the actual silhouette, the more it stands out, the better. So if I find my desaturated colors here, so if I go with something a little more saturated, that's not too bad. But, once again, could I choose a better color? What if I went a little very light? Well, that could be a problem because of their values. So maybe I don't want to go here. Maybe I want to go here. If I go really dark, maybe that could help stand out too. So it's entirely up to you how you want to control this, but how you do it definitely will change up the appearance of the main silhouette. And this is where the kind of the fun can happen, and maybe make different choices later on. You say, no, that doesn't stand out enough. So it's up to you how you want to do this. I'm going to start playing around and see what I can find. All right, now that's complete. I'm going to look at some observations. So once again, not only did my reds and blues and yellows never touch, yellow to yellow, this wouldn't be yellow or anything like that because the yellow's already there. I also mixed up my tones and tints and shades quite a bit. I did not want like a darker red next to a lighter red or a dark blue next to a light blue. I wanted them to be very different as well. So you'll notice that I may have, now that I can go back and see, wow, these two are very similar and they're very close to each other. So let me change one of those up to something different. That way they're very different from each other. I just kind of playing around with my observations. If I feel something should have more chroma, more saturation, or less, something should be lighter or darker or whatnot. So it's a lovely play, learning about the color, interacting with the color, just observing and seeing how things come together. Now I got this really interesting design, this beautiful abstraction here. I could tell what's in the middle here because of my hues, because of my pure hues. It looks really, really great. So now what I'm going to do, let's pretend I've done this one here. I'm complete. I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to select all of those vectors. That's from, once again, at 23 by 15. I'm going to copy. Now, of course, you can save this as an EPS or as an AI and place it into InDesign, but I'm just going to copy this, the vectors as they are, and place them directly into my InDesign file. So now I'm in InDesign. I've selected this. I know it's a 23 by 15. I've already set that up. And now in my first one, which is my primary one, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to edit, paste in place, or paste into, actually, sorry, my apologies, paste into. And now that content should go into there. I don't know why that happened, but it did. And that's it. I'm good. I'm ready to go. Now, if you'll notice in the calendar, I've set up a few things. Number one, I set up my layers. So your picture should go in your picture layer, and your calendar is all the things that you could change on the calendar. What should happen in this calendar? This should be filled with all primary colors. And then, of course, the secondary. This should be filled with secondary, and this should be filled with tertiary. Let me show you what I mean. So what I've set up 3 different paragraph styles. So your primary year, primary month, week, days, secondary, same year, month, week, days, and tertiary. So first we're going to focus on primary. What I've also done in your swatches panel is I've placed in every single color that is in that color chart. So all your red tints, tones, and shades, red orange tints, tones, and shades, all the way down to red violet tints, tones, and shades. So everything is in here, so you could add all these colors. So what you might want to do is say, look, I want to change up the color of this. I just don't want this to be white or black. I really want you to play around with the colors. You can keep the background color white. I'm totally fine with that. But what I would like to say is, okay, let me go to my paragraph styles. And let me click on my primary year. I'm going to double click. Remember, I don't have to select anything. Everything's already set up for you. My primary year, I'm going to go to my character color. Now, yes, I do not love the interface here because you have to, scroll quite a bit to get to all these colors. But I'm focusing on just my primary red, yellow, and blue. So let me look at my red tones, and let's look at this red. Oh, look, it looks very nice. I like that. It doesn't have to be the pure hue. It can be a tint, tone, or shade of that, but it should make sense in terms of contrast. But once again, we're just playing around with color. Now, what about my primary month? Well, let's look at the character color there. So the month names will be, let's go with a blue. So I'm going to go try to find blue. There are my blue tints. Let's go with this blue Here, that is a blue tint. Yeah. And I'll say, okay. And you see that it changes color. Now my primary week, so this is the weeks here, the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. So I'm going to double click on that. Once again, character color. And I'm going to change that. Maybe I'm going to go back to the red. Maybe I just want to play around with the red. And I'll do a red tone. This one here. And I'll say, okay. And then my days could also be, maybe I'll do something similar. I want them to be similar to that. I could, of course. Let's play around with this red shade here. Okay, good. Say, okay, now, to change the color of the table, this is very simple to do as well. If I want to change the color of the table, it's all I have to do is select the entire cell. So I just click and drag, and now look. If I just select this, just a type is selected. But if I keep on selecting, the entire cell gets selected, and then I can change up the color of the swatch, which shows me the fill. I could change it up to one of my, once again, maybe I'll go with a yellow, or go with a yellow tint, make it very bright, or as light as I can, and there I go. So now if I click off of that, I see the value of the fill is that yellow. Look at that. I could do the whole thing if I want to. Look, I select and click one cell, or two, or three, or four. I can select many cells, and let me do the same thing. I'm going to choose a yellow tint. Maybe this time I'll go a little darker. And there we go. And maybe on this week line, I'll go with a yellow tone, and maybe I'll find something I like there, a little bit darker. There we go. So there's my colors. And now if I want, I can continue doing that with all of them and just refine those colors again, over and over and over again. And you could play around with all the colors you want. You want a blue background, you want yellow type, or whatever. The contrast should make sense. So I want you playing around with adding primary colors, tints, tones, and shades to these calendars, to all the type, to the calendars themselves. But I also want you to play around. Remember, every value has a hue. Let me take that back. Every hue has a value. So I want you to play around with the contrasts of those. I want you to play around with the different colors and have some fun. If you want to make it monochromatic, all yellows, all reds, or blues. If you want to play around with different ways, you could play with that by all means. So that's what I'm looking for there. And remember, all of your colors are here just in case you need them. You want to refer to them. They're locked, but you can get to them. You're going to place in your secondary here. So let me show you this one. So let's pretend I've completed my secondary as well, which I have. It's the same pattern. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring it into my secondary here. I click on the frame, edit, paste into, and there is my secondary. If I need to size it up for some reason, if it's a little off, that's okay. I can do that. Remember, it's a vector. And once again, there I go. And I could change up the color of this calendar to match the secondary colors now. And so with this one here. So now what I've done with the tertiary color one, well, I did something a little bit different. I thought worked quite well. I used the warmer colors to be the silhouette, the pure warmer colors to be inside the silhouette. And I used the cool colors to be in the background, which I thought made perfect sense. So it really stands out with these beautiful warmer colors and pure values, the pure hues, sorry, in my tinted tone shades. So this was a little bit easier to work with because now I don't have to worry about these colors touching each other here in the background. So I found I really enjoyed playing with this one. So that's entirely up to you. I used red violet, red orange, and yellow orange in my mids. Inside the silhouette, and I used my, which ones do I have here? I can't even remember all these tints, tones, and shades. Here they are. Here, this is my actual document here. So I used my yellow greens, my green blue, and my blue violet for my background. So my warmer colors were used in the inside, cooler colors on the outside. So I really kind of played around with that one quite well. I was happy with that and the way it turned out. Once again, I copy this one. I'm going to place it into my tertiary placeholder, edit, paste into. There it is. And now I'm going to color this however I want to color this. My paragraph styles, tertiary ones, I'm going to match them here. And of course I could select my tables and do them that way as well. But you do have to work with each table individually, which still doesn't take too long. It does work out quite well. So I hope this helps you understand what we're looking for here. Primary, secondary, tertiary, they're actually a really beautiful way to play around with the Illustrator, play around with the colors, really understand how saturated colors really come forward and how toned and shaded colors actually recede cooler colors as well, but it's also interesting to play with certain values as well, how lighter colors against darker colors could recede or advance depending on where they're set. So hopefully you have some fun with this. There's some great observation here and you understand how this works. Then of course, I'm going to just export this as a PDF. Now, if you linked these in, I want you to save your links. If you just embedded these, remember now because I embedded them, there's actually no links, but the file size shouldn't really be that big because it's all vectors, so it's okay. So we should be looking pretty good here. So hopefully you'll make some calendars for yourself. You'll submit these. You've played around with color quite a bit and learned a lot about tints, tones, and shades and saturated colors.